CFR Network, CFR News. Good day, good night all. Shalom, balance, paradise, niha, bonjour, hola, wassalam, all of the universal greetings. Glad to be here. Thank yourself for tuning into this broadcast. And most importantly, thank yourself for surviving the zombie apocalypse. Another day, another dollar, depending on where you are in this plane of existence. Special guest with me, Paul on the plane, critical thinker, father, and everything else in between. Welcome to the broadcast, sir. How are we?
I am doing really well. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. Doing great. Like we were talking about just briefly before the broadcast, a year ago and definitely 2 years ago, we've experienced a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
A tremendous amount. And based upon the experiences, because life is one big experience, I am very much a person cup half full. So no matter what situation, we're always looking for solutions and the brighter side kind of thing. So with all of those interesting experiences, trustfully, those experiences have fortified you as a person, as an individual, and your immediate sort of unit and dynasty, and has trustfully created additional options, additional opportunities, and just giving you I guess a reboot in regards to what's the direction of life that I actually want to go now. Now we've been through this. Would you agree?
Yeah, apologies. I didn't know if there was another question in there.
Oh, no
So
problem.
yeah, for me personally, it definitely has. I think anybody that would say that the last couple of years hasn't changed them in some way, I think they would be shortchanging themselves. Now, maybe it changed some people for the worse and some for the better. That's obviously up to the individual or maybe the people around them. But for me personally, I learned a lot about fellow man and, mankind, that is, men and women.
Yes.
And, I wasn't surprised, I guess, in a lot of ways how my fellow countrymen and countrywomen here in the States reacted to mandates, quote unquote, mandates, laws, just mainstream narrative. So, but I also developed, I think, a lot of compassion for my fellow man the last 2 years in some ways. I'm not saying that in a way, to be kind of build myself up. It created a lot of different perspectives that I hadn't had before. And so I think I became empathetic to a lot of people and their situations. Socioeconomic status has changed a lot.
Yes.
Their businesses failed. People were struggling financially. There was a lot of mental anguish going on. So I think it changed all of us. I think we have to admit that. But for me personally, I went through the whole spectrum of emotions.
And I think coming out on the other side now, and having we've wiped the glasses clean a little bit. We can see a lot more clearer. There's a more defined path of sorts. It's been very up in the air. For instance, traveling. I'm one who likes to be on a plane very frequently, being on this little island that climate-wise isn't the best, to say the least. So, we like to travel, and that's been awful. That has been something that I've attempted a few times, but based upon, as you can appreciate, and as you may have experienced, I'm not traveling anywhere with a mask on my face. There's no way. There's no way. And all of the additional protocols, all the additional costs, implications that go along with this.
Yeah.
It was just like, but now, as I say, we can see people are flying now. There is a lot more chaos. I'm not too sure if you're having the same problems. I haven't heard anything over there in America, but over here, because of what's happened, this is all built-in obsolescence and planned design. We don't have enough ground crew to support the airlines now. So we have huge, massive queues in the airports. People are waiting for hours. Some people are waiting for multiple days or even having their flights cancelled every other
Mhm.
day. Multiple airlines are cancelling these flights. So it's interesting time to be alive and to navigate this plane of existence. But I think it's definitely getting greater later, as they say.
I hope they resolve the air travel logistical nightmare that we're experiencing soon, because I, like you, prefer to be moving around, at least domestically,
Mhm.
here in the States. And yeah, I have avoided travel just the last few weeks, hearing the news and hearing some pretty, some horror stories from friends and family that were going to travel and they had, trips canceled or
Yeah.
postponed and, outside of their control. So I don't know if the degree that we're seeing it here in the States is more or less than other parts of the world, but it is impacting us here. I, in fact, saw on social media this morning, it was very interesting. I believe it was the Union for American Airlines Workers purchased Facebook advertising. It was on Facebook. And basically, saying, hey, we need, better, systems for scheduling or something like that. But it was the Union for American Airlines Pilots and Workers, what have you,
Mhm.
that was posting an ad on Facebook so that American Airlines would see it, I guess.
Wow.
It was really interesting. I had never seen something like that. Now, we see political stuff all the time. This wasn't political. This was union
Yeah.
based, and saying, hey, and they had put together an ad. I mean, it was, there was good production quality, and it had, people sitting in the airport, calling and
Yes.
frustrated. And I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody else has seen it. I just happened to see it this morning. That's very unique. I have never seen anything like that before. That's what's going on, in the world right
Wow.
now with that industry.
Well, that's interesting because I may be incorrect, and I don't know if the alliance is still there, but British Airways and American Airlines have some kind of connection.
Mm,
Um, Now, currently, British Airways staff, again, union related, are, are striking.
interesting.
They're striking. The rail industry is also striking. We're having multiple industries now. Union, we have a local company who manufactures interiors for luxury vehicles, the high end vehicles. Now their staff are complaining that they're getting paid under minimum wage. The minimum wage in the UK is £10 an hour,
Hmm.
which for some parts of the world would seem extremely high. But based upon the cost of living, which has risen just like the sun, that £10 an hour is still a very low figure. And these guys are getting paid under that value.
Wow.
And they're working for a luxury interior car manufacturer. They're now
Hmm.
striking under the union rules. So it seems to be like a rebirth of the 1980s in unions
Hmm.
striking. Well, not even 80s, it was 60s, 70s, 80s. That's when all of that stuff was happening over in the UK. So maybe, as I dubbed the United Kingdom or Great Britain, maybe the brains of the beast are now starting the trend, and the belly of the beast, where you are sort of thinking, okay, they're doing it. Let's slowly increment the same sort of thing over here.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up kind of the history there. I'm not sure how old you are, but earliest memories of kind of world affairs would probably be in the 80s for me,
Mhm.
kind of mid 80s or so. And I seem to remember with the automobile manufacturers a lot of union activity,
Mhm.
strikes and just a lot of news, I guess, around that industry and unionizing and striking workers and what have you. So I haven't really thought about it till you bring that up, but we're seeing that now in the airlines, and it's obviously affecting, well, it sounds like it's not just here in the States. And so I always wonder when I see news, in the States, I don't assume that it's happening all over the world, but, we get sheltered, right? I
Yes.
mean, we are in silos. It depends on, what is being covered by where we get our news. And it's so difficult to determine what is factual and what isn't. what is just rhetoric or narrative or whatever you want to call it, or just flat out fake news versus, what can we rely on? I found the most reliable news sources are, my friends on Facebook who I know and trust, who I have met, maybe once or twice, or at least interacted with at a high level for a long period of time, so I have some trust in them, some confidence in them. What are they seeing? That's way more, I put a lot more confidence in that and faith in that than I ever would on what I would see on, the local news or national news here in the States. In fact, I don't even get my news there, but, it would be probably quite different to compare the two when it comes to one event, what the national news is telling me and what my friends, maybe boots on the ground are seeing and hearing. Twitter is a great place, if you can just find the hashtag and really see what's going on. If there's some big world event, I mean, before they maybe shut it down. Because I remember, a lot of times there's hashtags that weren't even available to be used. Or certain hashtags would be shadow banned or things like that. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous, how we're trying to discern what's really going on in the world right now.
It's so tricky with the deep fakes. I mean, you get video sent to you on WhatsApp and you're thinking, the first thing I think after I watch it, I think, is this real? Because you can do pretty much anything with digital media these days. So that's the first thing I think of. And then when you look at, as you say, the news, you look at legacy media and you think, okay, these are paid news representers to present a narrative. Okay, so if I can go to someone who I have a relationship with, who tests information on a regular basis using multiple different sources to then come to a consensus of, okay, this from this source, and that source, this is what I'm thinking is going on based upon, rather than, as I say, just being a lemon or a sheep and just sitting there and just swallowing the information and then just spitting out, just vomiting out to people. Oh no, this is what's happening. You're crazy, you are. You shouldn't do that. This is what the little glowing box told me this. And, they've got suits on, Paul. Like, come on.
They're professionals. They went to school to be unbiased.
Totally.
Where we get our information is so critical these days. And it becomes such an effort to dig in and try to determine what is true or not. Obviously, if it's something that's impacting you personally or at some level of, personally, then, you're going to spend the time to do that. But when it comes to, maybe big events in the world where there's mild interest, it doesn't affect me directly, or maybe it doesn't do it today. And there's maybe long-term ramifications, but those of us who have, multiple businesses and a family and busy lives and what have you, are we taking the time to do that? Probably not.
No.
Again, if it's personally impacting us today, we're going to, invest the time necessary to do what we need to do. But so much of the narrative is packaged up so neatly and given to you so you can just consume it while you're being busy. That makes it really easy for people in general to accept it, because somebody's doing all the work for me. And, and the memes went around, especially the last 2 years, hey, I don't need to do any thinking. My government does it for me, or my news sources do it for me. I just have to plug in, get the information, and I am well informed, And if you're questioning that, then you must have not, you must have flunked kindergarten. You must be mentally retarded. That's the stuff that goes through their mind, because they package it all up in so neatly for us. Why don't you just accept it? Why are you anti-science, Noble?
Yes.
Why are you so anti-science?
Well, science or scientism? That is the question. The anti-thesis of the whole of this magical show, which has been put on, as you say, it's the responsibility. People do not want to be responsible for their own lives these days. They'll be responsible in regards to the carnal self. So yes, I'll lease that vehicle, even though it's more than my rent. I will purchase these fancy belts and all of these shiny trinkets and these little dog biscuits because it makes me feel good. because I've been marketed to do these things, to stand in weird positions and put phones up in the air and take pictures from crazy angles and stuff and contort your body in all of these different ways, or even better still, just go window shopping, try clothes on and take pictures in them and then post them all over social media. This is my life. The persona which you're seeing on social media is really my life, and I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. Everything else, I'll allow somebody else to take care of that, because it's too much problems, Paul. I can't work all of these hours a day, look after these children, do all of this kind of stuff, and then have to like build a real solid foundation, do additional research, talk to my children when they get home from school. I can't do all of that.
It is exhausting to try and keep up. You know, I think of those folks who are, you know, have online circles of influence, you know, and they look to provide value to their viewers and broadcasters, much like you do. You know, obviously producing content, you
Yes.
know, trying to cut through the noise and provide something valuable for folks. It's got to be exhausting to do that and, you know, manage the children and a job or business and still have some time to go travel and, you know, what have you. So they're making it, I say they, and I try not to use the word they, because, you know, it's like, well, so no, they did this or they did that, you know, this obscure nebulous, you know, body or people, whatever, but it's difficult, and probably by design, you know, to make it so it's just a lot easier to take, you know, what is spoon fed to you. And it just makes sense, you know, for people that have got that. And you can maybe go back and even maybe me call this, you know, if you kind of medicalize it, you know, trauma-based mind control.
Of course.
You know, over time we've been taught, we grew up in a system, we grew up in a culture where the person that is on the news, you know, every night with the suit and tie on is to be trusted. You know, Walter Cronkite, you know, here in the States, you know, he was, boy, if he said it, then it was gospel. You know, he was proven to be a professional and distinguished, and very, very intelligent. He was a trusted source, and so that was our parents. You know, and then we grew up in that same culture. And so unless something inside of you sparks some interest to seek out the truth, the truth. And I believe there's one truth. I don't believe that there is my truth and your truth. And, you know, you go find your truth and I'll find my truth. And if we don't agree, that's okay. And just because you and I disagree doesn't mean I hate you. But at the end of the day, there is one truth. And for me, that's Jesus Christ. And, you know, and I'm a Christian, and, you know, and I believe the Bible literally and that sort of thing. But regardless, there is one truth, you know, and whatever that situation is, you know, there is something that really happened, or maybe something that didn't happen. There is a truth there. And so how you see something, you know, is it, you know, and how I see something, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying that I have the truth, but there is one truth somewhere. If we can cut through enough of the noise and the fake news and the narratives, that's the difficult part. Is finding that.
It sure is, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, is because I want to try and understand, overstand, and even understand what was your tipping point for many like myself. 9/11, 2001, you know, was one of the major turning points in regards to what on earth is going on.
It definitely woke a lot of people up. If you want to use that term, there was a lot of people that right out of the gate were like, this doesn't add up. And embarrassingly, I will admit that it was probably 2000. Oh gosh, let me see. 2001, I would say it might have been 2012, 2011, maybe at least a decade later, when I started to question the official narrative of September, you know, 2001. Gosh, it seems like it seems like a lifetime ago now. But you're right. that was instrumental in a lot of people saying, okay, if they weren't completely honest with us about what happened that day, what else are they
Exactly.
hiding?
Yeah.
So it opens up a can of worms for folks. And there wasn't, I would say there wasn't one moment in my life where that I could at least point to that I could say, okay, now I'm a true seeker. Before I just consumed everything as I was told, but then the next day I woke up and something happened, or something whatever, and then now I'm a different person. I was fortunate enough to grow up in with schools and family and friends that didn't always take everything at face value. So I'm not saying that they were on the right track, but and I give a lot of credit to my mother. She was always looking at alternative news sources. She was always questioning things throughout most of her life. And she wasn't on the right track very often looking back now, but she
at least questioned.
She instilled in me what I believe to be fact, that what the mainstream narrative needs to be questioned. That was what she taught me. And so it wasn't until later in life, I think, that really started to kick in for me, because, I went to public school and public college, and, I grew up and started to get got indoctrinated into many of these things, and just, didn't question science.
You didn't question
people were smart. They figured this out. So we didn't have to. Now we just read books and we learn what they discovered, and we move on. And, then I went to school, or then I, got a job, and, out of college, and got a family and married, and, you just go on with life. But that seed had been planted throughout my life, or had been instilled in me early in life. And so it was always there. I think one thing that I questioned, thinking back now, in high school and college was, the theory of evolution was just shoved down my throat in the public school, and what have you. And having grown up, in a Bible believing church, it always was in conflict with the creation versus evolutionist sort of viewpoints, because I was taught the Bible is true, but then, I find people trying to, kind of twist their understanding, or the Bible doesn't mean what it says there.
It's not literal, Paul. It's not literal.
It's not literal there. So that was in conflict inside of me for decades. And it was probably in the early 2000s where I think, I got introduced to Ken Hovind. I'm not sure if you know who he is.
Yes, indeed.
So I started to watch some of his videos, in fact, got some of his DVDs, and he started really kind of breaking down, the creation versus evolutionist thing, and really kind of re-inspired a lot of Bible believing in me that had been crushed by the system, at least in my opinion. I got really fired up. I was like, okay, I can trust the Bible again. It was exciting for me, because that's where my faith lies, and that's where my first love was. And
well, what denomination did you grow up in?
I grew up, I guess it would be called Lutheran. I grew up in, so it's a very kind of conservative, church. And the school and the church were both, I went to a private school up until high school as well. Then I went to public high school, and obviously went on to, college and things like that. But that's what was the kind of the foundation that I was raised on. And so I would, call it my first love. Now, my interpretation of what the scriptures say over, my adult years has changed as I've read more and studied more and prayed and, what have you. So I believe a lot of different things now than I used to, but
of course,
that foundation was there.
Yeah.
And so that really got me on the path of saying, okay, if there's this system, sorry to cut you off there, but to finish this thought, if there's this system in place to bring young children up to believing something that is contrary to the Bible, that's where my wheel started spinning, is like, well, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
What else is the system designed to do, or to tell us, to separate us from our creator? That's what I got out of the evolution versus creationist thing, is that the world, worldliness, the Bible uses that a lot, which is anti-God, has systems in place to separate us from the creator. I believe that's the enemy. So that's where my brain went. If that's designed to separate us from our creator, what else is a system in place now that I have been indoctrinated into that is designed to separate me, my family, my children, what have you, from our creator? And that's what started me on the path I am today, probably. Yeah, looking back.
Do you also consult the extra biblical texts as well, Apocrypha, etc.?
Yeah, I just the last probably 2 or 3 years really kind of began reading those, and I wasn't really even aware of them until 2 or 3 years ago. I'm just a baby with this stuff. I know probably you and a lot of other of your viewers or listeners have been diving into that stuff for a long time. I went to a conference, Take on the World conference in August of 2019, that really opened my eyes to a lot of this new information, and started me on a path of really diving into, some of these other texts. And I mean, when I first opened up some of them and started reading, I was like blown away because it like filled in the blanks on a whole bunch of stories in the canon. I was like, what? Like when I was reading Enoch and it was talking about, how Abel was just this soul that was wailing after, his brother had murdered him. I was like, it's like discovering I'm a big Star Wars buff. So it's like discovering that it's kind of like when I saw episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, that was the first one I saw. And then I discovered there was a prequel, that there was a New Hope, episode 4. I was like, what? So anyway, not that the extra biblical texts like predate the Bible, but my point is that there's more to the story. It's out there. So, I really wanted to dive in.
It's so, as you say, it fills in so much more of the blanks and the questions that I guess non-believers will throw. Some of those extra bits text will give you the full body of the answer, so it can be presented. So they'll be like, okay, you've answered that one. I've never heard that before. Explained and defined so clearly. It is a very powerful book. He only left you basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Yeah, I remember hearing that when I was young. I love that. I know. And for baby, baby Christians today, it must be really sobering to find out, maybe that there is a creator, maybe somebody that was atheist or agnostic or what have you. I know many people that I've met over the last 5 or 6 years since I've been involved in a lot of these truth seeking communities that were basically atheists or agnostic, that have come to believe now that there's a creator, and that we have purpose. We're not an accident, and that whole thing, getting back to the evolutionist creationist conversation. But my point is that how amazing it must be to realize, number one, that there is a creator, maybe if you didn't think there was before. And then secondly, to find out that he wrote a book.
Look,
we might want to know what's in that book.
Yes. And the other thing,
just a safety tip, pro tip, you might want to check out what's in that book. Anyway, go ahead.
We're special. The other thing which this also makes us realize is that we're special.
We're special.
We're not exactly special. We're unique. We're not an accident, a unexplained accident, which is billions and billions chances of getting struck by lightning. Like, these things are just so improbable, but for some reason, you play with numbers and you say some nice words and you get a 15th century priest, pope or something, that guy Piso, whatever his name was, to then come up with this the idea to challenge the creation theory. Do you know about that?
Oh, the Jesuit priest?
Yes.
Yeah, that came up with basically just tried to come up with ways to explain what we experience and what we see with, and kind of leave God out of the picture, but still to apologize, being apologetic for the Bible and say, well, it means this, obviously, the people that wrote it, it was a different time and the context is different, what have you. And I believe God's word is universal for any anybody, anytime. And it had to be, and it's been so preserved. The more you learn about how the Bible was handled, the scriptures, specifically the Hebrew portion of the scriptures that, written, thousands of years ago, and, 3 or 4 different languages on 3 or 4 different continents over thousands of years. The fact that they all, everything lines up, tells me that there was supernatural protection and organization going on to preserve that for the latter generations, such as that we find ourselves living in now, so that it's still applicable to us today. That blows my mind. It simply blows my mind, and I feel so humbled and grateful that God, our Creator cared enough to make sure that it was applicable. There's no way that we should have at least the Old Testament today. There's no way. With all of the, the nation of Israel and all of the oppression that it experienced, that its writings and history would be alive today. And the detail that we have, talk to any Hebrew scholar about this, they'll say there's no way without the supernatural protection of God. But then you go to find out, like the New Testament, that there's more evidence that Jesus existed, and the New Testament happened as the way it was recorded by those that wrote it. That there's more evidence for that than Alexander the Great, who is in every one of our history books as fact. But then you'll have somebody sitting in class next to you that says, well, the Bible's just stories. It's not stories. Stories make you to feel good, and it's for people to that need to feel like they're loved and that they're protected, and to believe in a God. But boy, if you just dive into the facts, man, and look at how the manuscripts that we have for the books of the New Testament specifically, there's so much more evidence and third-party evidence. There's writings, for your viewers or or listeners that don't know this. There are many third-party writings that aren't part of the Bible, but these were historians at that time frame that corroborated the apostles' stories.
Flavius Josephus.
They mentioned a guy named Jesus, a Nazarene, that all of this stuff happened. These historical writings, these aren't biblical writings. These weren't Christians. These weren't followers of Jesus that were writing this. This was basically people that were capturing the news and survived the years and years and centuries that corroborate the apostle stories. Just so cool to find out, when you really dive in. So anyway, I kind of feel we got off track there. My apologies.
Oh, no, not at all. Because
I get kind of fired up when I start talking about history with this stuff. Sorry.
No, not at all. No, this is all part of the journey. Some of the listeners are very much Bible-based. Some hold some of the tenets and definitely believe in a creative force. But don't necessarily, like for myself, for instance, based upon geosocial political terms and the manipulation of religio, aka religion, I don't do titles in regards to, Noble, what are you? Are you a Christian? Are you? No, I don't hold any labels in that respect. What I will profess is that I study, hold dear the Old and New Testament, and try and live an upright life, know in the Creator and Yeshua HaMashiach.
Amen.
I try and keep things as simple and basic as possible in regards to the application. The study is going to be very complex, but the application, we want to keep things keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, and it's a great approach, and I agree with you. The labeling, for better or for worse. I really don't even like the term Christian, even though that's kind of what what Jesus's followers were called coming out of his time here on earth. But today's mainstream Christianity, I don't identify with at all. And so there's there's that, when somebody says, "Oh, you're a Christian," I'd say, "Well, you tell me what you think a Christian is, and I'll tell you if I'm that or not." It's like, what definition are you using? I mean,
Yes.
I try to, like, just like you, learning what God wants from us, and how we can show him love by obeying him, and obviously taking care of widows and orphans, and, all of the things that he says that, how we show love to him. But you talk to, Joe Blow, mainstream Christian father, and a lot of that stuff he probably wouldn't know, unfortunately.
Yes. Which is
So,
shocking because he's in control of a large flock. So what is he disseminating to this large flock?
yeah. Yeah. Well, you get into the 501c3 issue here in the States.
Yeah.
And
503 as well.
Yeah, I don't know how it exists and how the laws exist or tax code exists in other countries. So, you tell me, but here in the States, you essentially, there's things you can and cannot say from the pulpit to maintain your status, your tax-free status.
Yes.
And so at the end of the day, or what what you're hearing from your shepherd, the truth, or is it filtered?
That's the big question, especially with these mega churches. You get into the mega churches, 501c3 is not even.
Oh yeah,
even
think of Joel Osteen's church here in the States. I think it's called Lakewood. And don't get me wrong, I listen to, people might find this strange, I listen to Joel Osteen's podcast every morning. I don't agree with very much of his teachings, or his doctrine, shall I say?
Yeah.
But his podcast every morning, I listen to it on 2x speed and get through in about 12, 14 minutes. But he is such a great communicator, and it just makes me feel good, because it's not doctrinal based. It's just like, hey, you could be a good person, and look at people. It's good stuff.
Motivational of sorts, rather.
It is. But to your point, a church of that size has got, the IRS has got the target on the back of Joel Osteen and his organization is large. He has got to walk that straight and narrow, because if not, if Lakewood Church were to lose their tax status, that'd be game over. They would shut down.
Totally.
So all churches of that size, obviously. So your point is well taken. Those mega churches really have to make sure, because everything that guy says is recorded.
Yes.
And he slips up once, and then he's got to apologize, and it would be bad. And he's got to maintain the financial empire that he's built.
Totally. He's got to maintain that. And also,
he's just a great communicator. Doctrinally, I disagree with most of his stuff, I would say, when it gets down to some of the core issues. But at the end of the day, he's a great communicator. I don't know if he's doing more harm than good. That's a whole nother probably conversation about Joel himself. But he gets me fired up in the morning, because he just reminds me of some basic things that I can be a light to somebody. I mean, the one I listened to just a couple of days ago, it's still stuck in my head, is whose light are you going to be today? Just stuff like that. It's like real superficial stuff as far as, not doctrinal based, but it's true.
Yes,
that's true.
It is. But the danger in going down these areas is that people are viewing this as a spiritual and, a head of a church in essence. And if there's no fruit out of the manuscripts coming from his mouth, we're just talking about a motivational speaker.
Yeah. And that's mainly what he is. He's very inspiring, very, he's great in front of a crowd, tells funny stories. It's so easy to connect with them. He's a great orator. I forgot what the word is.
Yes.
Orator. He's a great one. Doctrinally, probably a thumbs down when it comes to the core issues, but I do like to listen to him.
Okay. Now, as we're winding down on this, I would definitely wanted to touch on the plane of existence that we live on. How did we get into? For me, it was watching first video I stumbled across in the good old BoobTube days, when you could actually get like good recommendations of sorts. I had something come up was it 10 Clues or something? It was Mark Sargent's one.
Mark Sargent, Flat Earth Clues.
That's it, Mark Sargent. So I watched that, and then straight away, Eric Dubé came up, very lengthy, and I was like, everything that was in there, I was thinking, okay, you've got some very
Was
good
this like
points here.
2016, 2017,
A bit
2015?
early,
Somewhere
but I
there.
think about 2015, 2014,
Okay.
20, yeah, around that sort of
Okay.
period.
Yeah.
So early-ish within the movement, quote unquote. I use air quotes in that. So I did my due diligence. I looked at the references, and I thought, this makes like perfect sense. I mean, we definitely didn't go to the moon. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Documentary, everyone should watch.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting. I mean, I've got a folder full going back to DVD days of just of all, it's literally all of that kind of stuff. Aliens, UFOs, you name it. So I started to home in on this, and I started looking back some old stuff. Had Mark on a few times. I've had D-Marble.
Oh, he's a good
on.
conversation. Oh, I love D-Marble.
Yes, Daryl's excellent. Very straight-laced, to the point, kind of not too complex. So I've had a few guys on, but it's for yourself. I mean, what was your kind of introduction? Obviously, was it again sort of via the old BoobTube channel, or did you have some other kind of awakening in that respect?
Yeah. So my story is, I think I would say it was October of 2016. I don't remember the exact date of October, but I know the month because and I told this story many times. My wife came home. We were having dinner. We were catching up about the day. And my wife I would say she still is, alternative medicine. Again, doesn't take the mainstream narrative, doesn't go on WebMD to diagnose and go get pills from the doctor to solve problems, to solve medical issues, but organic. And we had just adopted our baby girl at the time. So, she was like 3 months old or something like that. So, my wife is very active on Facebook in adoption groups, and because she wasn't able to nurse because we adopted the baby girl, and so just involved in those types of communities on Facebook. And she came home and she said, "Did you know that there are people out there that think the Earth is flat?" And I, probably like most of our initial gut reaction or knee-jerk reaction is, well. I mean, how can they think that? I mean, have they ever seen any pictures from space or, whatever, it laughs it off. And if memory serves, we just went about our dinner, but it planted a seed. And I'm going to point back probably to the old evolution creationist sort of tangent that I had been on, kind of a side parallel, thing going on throughout my entire life at that point, or most of my life at that point. And it must have been a thought process of, well, if they lied about the Earth being, billions of years old and how it was created, could they be lying about where we live? And it just planted a seed in my mind. And a couple nights later, I was Googling flat Earth, what have you. And I came up probably the same videos you did, Eric Dubé. I came up with ODD.
Oh, yes.
I came up with Flat Earth Clues by Mark Sargent. I came up with that stuff. I think like 100 or 200 reasons the Earth is flat by Eric Dubé. I can't remember the title of it. I think he's got 200 of them.
Yeah.
I think that's the first one I actually ever watched, or maybe it was the ODD 21 questions or one of those. This was like late 2016.
Yeah.
And all-nighter. Watching video after video, like you said, the algorithm used to like recommend good stuff. It was like, wow. So I came across all that stuff with like the first night. So like 2 or 3 nights later, I emerged from this fog, I haven't slept and, a few hours here and there, but I've just been consuming all of this information. And I was like, wow, they lied about that too. We don't live in this spinning ball, wobbling, orbiting, salty water space pair rocket, going, insane speeds, 12 different directions simultaneously. No wonder we don't feel anything. This is it. We are the center of everything. We are unique and special. So it just drove home more of the points. I took to it like a fish to water.
Yeah.
Because, and then when I got into the stuff, it was like, oh, by the way, you know, it was mostly like, because Dubé, ODD, Mark Sargent, they're more kind of like science-based or non-religious sort of approach. Then I started coming across the videos. You know, there's 120 verses that talk about
in the Bible,
a stable, you know, non-rotating, non-moving, you know, realm with a dome over it. That's in the Bible. What? I mean,
so that
boom, I was done then, because it brought back my first love again, you know, that it's in the Bible. So, you know, like, you know, by a week later, I'm like starting to want to make my own content on YouTube, you know, because I'm like, I got to tell everybody about this. And I remember I blew up, you know, social media, and hey guys, you know, everybody, the Earth's flat, you know, blah, blah, blah. So like everybody else, I didn't do it very tactfully. I just blew doors off of people and sending them all those videos and stuff. And I, you know, lost a lot of friends.
As you do.
Well, I wouldn't say I lost friends, but let's just say we don't hang out as much as we used to. You know, they just became more casual acquaintances now because I'm insane as far as they're concerned.
Yeah,
I got a whole new group of friends over the last, you know, over the years that rolled on by after that. So that was good. It was good. That's my story.
That's what happens. That's what happens through this quote unquote game they call life. We have, and as it is written, everything has its reason and has its season. And, you know, sometimes we have friends who last the duration, and others are just here for certain times. And then it's always moving forward. Nothing in life remains the same, and everything is subject to change. So it's just grasping those opportunities, seeing where you're growing because we all grow as people. We can't stay the same. Some people are still within this arrested development phase, and they still think they're 18 and they're like 50s and stuff. That's fine, but generally you're going to gravitate to people who still got that mindset. We clearly don't have that kind of mindset. So, you know, we are going to drift apart of sorts, but we can connect back periodically to, you know, relive some old times, catch up on what's happening and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I've got some, you know, I consider good friends that they kind of know, you know, where my feelings lie. And a lot of it, you know, is like, you know, I'm a Christian, and, you know, and I don't come in and say, well, I believe it because I'm a Christian, although, you know, it grew my faith a lot more in the Bible. And I would say, I mean, if it lines up with the Bible, then I'm going to probably spend my time there. But I've got a lot of friends who, you know, are, you know, for lack of a better term, worldly, you know, and so we just don't associate as much as we, you know, used to, but, you know, we still catch up every once in a while. And it was important for me to show them that I was still the same guy.
Yes.
In fact, if anything, you know, when this topic has come up in the past, you know, and the Bible inevitably comes up, and I would call them, you know, more atheist or agnostic or what have you, they know where I'm standing. It's important that they see the reason for my hope, you know, and if anything, I try to even be a better person. You know, the more I learn about the world and more it lines up with scripture, the more my faith is emboldened, and the more I want to be a good witness, you know, for our Creator, you know, for our Savior. So if anything, I tried to become even a better friend than I was before, you know, just volunteering to help them out or what have you. And not saying, you know, and not saying the reason why, but I just wanted to be a good friend, because that's my witness.
Yes.
They know that I'm a Christian, and I want them to see me behave the way I do and operate the way I do, and know the reason why, because talk is cheap.
Yes.
Action and behavior and is everything.
Volumes.
Because, you know, and that gets back to, you know, a Christian today, and I use quotes again, because, you know, I see a lot of hypocritical behavior for people that confess to be Christians, but then what I see that they say online, or they do this, you know, here and there, and they act this way. I love them, but I hate sin.
Of course.
God has taught me to hate sin. And so that's why another reason I don't like labels. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like, yeah, but I don't want to be called a Christian if that is what Christianity is. Indeed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
totally.
There you have it.
Very last one. Controversial topic, and situation which is going on currently in America, Roe versus Wade. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, it's obviously very, very controversial for good reasons. I obviously am a pro-lifer when it comes to, I don't believe in ending the life of a human. I believe life begins at conception. That being said, the politicalization of all of this, I don't know if maybe your viewers, or maybe you've talked about this in the past, if you really dive into the Roe versus Wade decision in 73, it had very little to do with what people think it
exactly.
Yes. So it's been educational for a lot of people that I've been able to talk to about it, because I said, go back and look at and actually read the court case and why the court determined what it did. It had very little to do with a woman's right to choose, and body autonomy and all this stuff. But that being said, it's interesting that it happened now.
Very interesting.
The timing is suspect with a lot of this stuff. The war was suspect, the timing, and maybe it's coincidental, but regardless, I've seen it as an opportunity, because we have a lot of people that we know on Facebook that are friends and neighbors that we see both on Facebook and in real life, almost on a, almost on an everyday basis, that are very passionate about women's rights. And they have experiences with, these issues, personal experiences with these issues. So they're deeply held religious beliefs for a lot of people, and they're good people. They're really good people. So it's been an opportunity to really discuss, what that means. It didn't change a lot here in the States. Now, there were trigger laws that went into effect because of the court's opinion being changed. That being said, it didn't remove rights, I would say, in the traditional sense that I think the mainstream narrative is making it out to.
Yes.
That's my personal opinion, obviously. But it's very decisive, very divisive of a topic for obvious reasons. And it's a spiritual battle. And I believe that the shape of our world is also now, and I don't claim to say that the earth is flat. I don't know what shape it is. I know what the Bible says about it. I know what it isn't. And that's what we've been told it was from by the time we were in kindergarten, and seeing a globe in our classroom. I know it isn't that.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't line up with the Bible, but I don't know what the shape is. But my point is that I can't remember what my point was there. It had to do with Roe versus Wade and flat Earth. And these are spiritual battles, in my opinion, and that's why there's so much divisiveness in when these two groups, by and large, talk and argue. And that's because these deeply held religious beliefs on both sides are coming out. And a lot of it comes down to, do you believe that we're created? Do you believe that we're special? Do you believe the Bible to be true? That's where most of this is all boiled down to. I believe that most of the people that are going to be pro-abortion, etc., most of them are going to say, and I'm making a generalization here, but I'm saying, I'd say on average, most are going to believe the theory of evolution. They're going to believe space is real. They're going to believe we live on a globe. They're going to believe the Bible is a book of stories and not meant to be taken literal and that sort of thing. That's just going to be kind of their philosophy or their worldview.
Yes. A
lot of the people that are pro-life, I would say, are believe that the Bible is true. At least, there's a lot of it that we can take as literal. And they question maybe a lot of the mainstream narrative. At some level, they're not just taking it at pure face value. Now, there's a lot of people that believe the Bible to be true, not completely literal, that still believe we live on a globe. And there's a big chunk of those as well. But my point is, it comes down to, it's a supernatural, I think, a spiritual sort of debate. It transcends just what we see here in the physical. It's a spiritual battle going on, and it's for our souls, and it's between God and it's between his enemy. Okay. And there's no middle ground. Okay. If your soul, and you go a little bit more away from God, Satan grabs that ground right away. Okay.
Yes.
And if you go a little bit, go a little bit toward God, he's going to grab that up right away. I mean, there is no middle ground here. You're either in or you're out. That's the way it works. It might be tough for some people to hear, but that's what I believe. And so there's a battle going on for our souls, and this stuff is meant to separate the sheep from the goats, unfortunately.
Totally. There's no place to be lukewarm. That will be spat out of the mouth.
You will be spewed out. Yes. I did not know you. I mean, how? Maybe we'll end on this, but that verse in Matthew, I can't remember the reference off the top of my head, but depart from me. I never knew you. These are people that were at the feet of Jesus saying, we cast out demons in your name. We healed the sick in your name. We did all these wonderful things in your name. And Jesus says, depart from me. I never knew you. You worker, you lawless person, you worker of iniquity. We better start figuring out what that means, because there's a lot of people that think they are made in the shade, hunky dory, and everything is going to be fine. And I'm afraid I don't want to be one of those that just assumes I'm okay, good to go, because there's a lot of people that sounds like they're going to be surprised. We should probably pray about that and meditate on that and try and figure out what that means.
Most definitely. Have you had fun today?
Very much so. Thank you for your questions. It's been a lot of fun. Having this conversation for sure. Thanks for having me on.
You're most welcome. Can you tell us who you are, but please don't tell us your name, sir?
I go by Paul on the Plane on social media.
No. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
The question is, I'd like you to tell us who you are, but not to tell us who your name is.
Oh, my apologies.
Don't worry.
I think meant like my real name. Who I am without using my name. Oh, this is a good one. This is kind of like, what do you want on your gravestone? What do you want your eulogy to be?
This is it. So in essence, the best way.
What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, like how would people describe you? Like, what are your attributes? Are you love? Are you kindness? Are you?
I'm a lover, not a fighter, right? Oh, that's a great question. I would hope that somebody that if they said this, that you would think of me. I am a Christian father and husband, and somebody that looks to help other people if I can. I volunteer where I can. I like to share Jesus where I can, if they're open to it. That's what I found. People are either open or they're not, and I just look for the ones that are open. I'm a businessman. I like to travel. I like to play tennis, and love my family. We do as much as we can together when I'm not busy. I like to RV too.
Excellent. It's been a wonderful time. Truly enjoyed the conversation. Very lastly, please do throw your social medias out, and I'll make sure I put the links below in the description, sir.
Yeah, I would say the main one is my YouTube channel. All of my videos are still up there, as long as the ones that YouTube allowed me to keep up there are there. And that is youtube.com/Paul on the Plane. And I also have a Facebook page, and that is facebook.com/just Paul on the Plane. And then if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me at paul@paulontheplane.com.
Excellent. Make sure you go over, check out the videos if you haven't already. Put some comments down on the old videos. Like, subscribe. And if it's the first time you've stumbled across a CFR network, please do leave a 5-star review on the old podcast. If you're watching on the old YouTube, etc., like, comment, subscribe, and share. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We will be back.